ביאור משנה ד', explanation for משנה ד'. הדלה עליה, he vined upon her. He took vines and he put on it. הגביה והמשיך על הסוכה את הגפן, the vine, שיש לה זמורות ארוכות. You know, the vines have like a whole thing, and you build the pergola, and then you make it climb over. ואת הדלת, or the gourd, שיש לה עלים ארוכים, it has big leaves, ואת הכיסום, או כיסום, מן עשב, הנדלק כגפן, or another kind of vine, ושיחך על גבה, and then he put סכך on top, ויש גורסים על גבן. היינו ששיחך בסכך כשר על הגפן או על הדלת על הכיסום. So let's see what's the case. So the vineyard goes on it, and then you put some more palm leaves on top of that. So on top of the vineyard. ויש מפרשים, the those who explain, ושיחך על גבה, and he put more leaves on top, או שיחך על גבה, כלומר שיחך תחילה את סוכתו בסכך כשר, או the opposite. He put the kosher סכך first, והדלה עליה את הגפן או את הדלת וכו', and then he put the vineyard on top of the סכך. או שהדלת תחילה את הגפן, or the other way around, that first was the vineyard, הסוכה ותחיך על גבה סכך כשר. So then what is this? It's psula, it's not kosher. הסוכה. Why? מפני ששיחכה גם בדבר המחובר לקרקע. Over here we see one more rule about the schach. We don't know, it cannot be connected to the ground. שהוא schach פסול, and this is not kosher schach, because it's connected to the ground. ואם היה השיחוך, הסכך כשר הרבה מהן, now what happens like this? If 40% is vineyard, and 60% is palm leaves, so maybe now it's kosher, because you have the majority coming from kosher schach. Yeah, the majority is coming from kosher schach. הרבה מן, הרבה יותר מזמורות הגפן ומעלה הדלת, והרבבם יחד, and he mixed together the non-kosher schach with the kosher schach, עם הסכך הכשר, עד שאינם נראים בעין, until you cannot see them anymore. In other words, it's so mixed up that you can't, if you can see that this is a vineyard, it's all okay. But you mix it up in such a way that you can't see it's a vineyard, then הרבה או שקטצן, שקצץ את הענפים, that he cut off the vineyard, לאחר ששיחך בהם, after he covered in them. It says כשרה, it's kosher. We're going to see that the Gemara is going to tell you immediately, no, it's not kosher. We have another problem why it's not kosher. We're going to see soon why. Yeah. So this is what he did. He put vineyards on top, and then time to say, hey, it's mechubar lakarka. So it's not a problem. He cut all the things. So it's on mechubar lakarka. So it's still not kosher. Why not? הסוכה בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it explains, שאפילו קצצן, that even if you cut it, אין הסוכה כשרה. The sukkah is not kosher. Why? Everything is good now. It's a vegetation. It's not connected to the ground. What's the problem? Ella, it says, you know how it's going to be kosher? אם נענה את הענפים לאחר קציצתם. Only if you took it off and you took the schach off and put it back on, one by one. You have to take them off and put them back on. היינו שהרים כל ענף וענף והניחו. That he picked up each and every branch and he put it back. Why? What's the problem? שבכרחון זה דומה כאילו הניחה מחדש. We need him to put them there anew. על הסוכה שנאמר, because it says, חג הסוכות תעשה. Because it says, you should do the holiday of Sukkot. What do you mean you should do? ודרשו, and the rabbis learned, the word תעשה, you should do, ולא מן העשוי, not something that's already done. This is already was done. It was a non-kosher sukkah, and you just cut it down. In other words, it was already a sukkah. You have to do a sukkah. What is it? Take it off and put it back on. Down you do. כלומר, שבשעת עשיית הסוכה תהיה כשרה וראויה לסוכה. At the moment you're doing it, it has to be kosher for sukkah. ולא שבשעת עשייתה היא פסולה. Not at the time that you make it, it is not kosher. ואחר כך אתה מתקנן, only then you fix it. By the way, another problem which might later on is the sides. When you put the schach first, and then you put the sides, It's still not a kosher sukkah. Why? Because it wasn't kosher when you put the schach on. Yeah? If you put the sides first, and you didn't put the sides first, you put the schach first, and then you put the sides, you have to take it off and put it back on again. You know what I remember a story from my Moshe's grandfather. This just was his yahrzeit, Moshe's grandfather. I remember a story, in Yom Kippur War, he was in the war. Right? He was at the war, and in Israel, on Yom Kippur. And they sent him back for Sukkot. He was able to go back from Yom Kippur to Sukkot for one day. He was able to go back, and then, so he was able to go back home for Sukkot. So at home, he has a lot of sons, but they were all under 13 years old. They were small boys, 9, 10. So they built the sukkah. And he came like 3 minutes before Sukkot, before the time. So because they built the sukkah wasn't kosher, because it has to be done by an adult, at least the schach. So he says, he ran home, he took a broom, he took all the schach up, and then he ran into the house. Because he knew the sukkah is not kosher. Just like this. The sukkah has to be everything kosher. Even the guy who puts it has to be kosher. הילקח כששיחך בענפים מחוברים וקיצצם אחר כך, therefore when he covered it with a vineyard that was connected to the ground and only then he cut it, צריך לנענע אותם, he needs to move them. כמו שביארנו לעיל, like we explained before. שיהיה דומה כאילו סותר את הסוכה. It's like if he breaks the sukkah and puts it back. שהרי עיקר הסוכה הוא הסכך. Like we're going to learn, the main part of the sukkah is the covering, is the סכך. וחוזר ומשחך מתחילה בסכך כשר, and then he has to recover it with kosher סכך. ויש מפרשים, there are those who explained, שאפילו היה שיחוך הרבה מהם, that we said before, that you have vineyard and palm leaves, for example, and there's much more palm leaves than vineyards, צריך מכל מקום לקצצן. Nevertheless, he needs to cut it. או שקצצן, היינו שרוב הסכך הוא מן הגפן המודלת, או מן הדלת, ואם קצצם ונענם הסוכה כשרה. Whichever way you want to do it. Just the vineyard with the things, you have to continue to move it. זה הכלל. So this is the rule, בעניין הסכך. When it comes to סכך. כל שהוא מקבל טומאה. Anything that receives impurity. Anything that receives impurity. Let's get some definition. What does receive impurity? 2x4. Does it receive impurity? Let's see. כגון כלים. For example, a vessel. A vessel. בגדים, garments. וכיוצא בהם. And similar to them. You know? And similar. בגדים. A blanket that its job to be on top of the sukkah, on top of the thing, not necessarily receives tumah, by the way. I'm not sure it does. Because it's not made... It doesn't matter from what? Yeah. No, tumah, receiving tumah means it's a vessel. It has nothing to do with it. Yeah, to receive tumah, it can be anything. It can be wood, can be any material. It can be acrylic, it can be plastic. If it's a vessel...
wood doesn't מקבל tumah.
Oh, no. Wood receives tumah when it becomes a vessel. What does a vessel mean? For example, I'll give you an example. If you go a garden rake, you've got a rake. So you've got the thing that goes into the metal part. So if it's out in the old time, it would just be a stick that you will... it's a stick. That stick, if you buy it in the store, it's not receiving tumah because it's not a vessel yet. Once you put it in the rake, you made it into a handle. Now this stick became a thing. So anything that you do from it, if you make it a handle, you do something to it. It's part of a vessel. It becomes a vessel. So this is the schach, the rules for the schach. First of all, doesn't receive tumah. It is not receive tumah. In other words, it's not a vessel. It's raw material. It's called raw. Exactly, I think that's raw material. If it's raw material, I think even shitrak, I think it's already maybe not raw material, but the big thing, the wood, the plywood, even that might be raw material. You cannot use it as a sukkah because it's too wide. Yeah. But otherwise, theoretically, it is raw material. Yeah. Because it's not a vessel.
Made from it, whatever.
That's right. It is made for that. It's not made for. It's not made for as a vessel. It's made for raw material. So anything that is mekabel tuma, ve'en gidulo min haaretz, or anything that doesn't grow from the ground, or kol she'en gidulo min haaretz, אף על פי שאינו מקבל טומאה, even though he doesn't receive טומאה, כגון אורות בהמה שאינם מעובדים. For example, skins of animals, hides, that you didn't refine them, you didn't go through the process. So if you put the hide on top of the, not on top of the bed, like this, you're fine. Why? Again, אינו מקבל טומאה. שהואיל ולא נגמרה מלאכתם אינם מקבלים טומאה, because if they didn't finish their job, they don't receive tuma. So if you put hides underneath the schach, even if it's full, if it's more than a half, it's just there for sight. It's not receiving tuma. It might be, you cannot use the schach, but it might be batted to schach. אין משחכים בו. You're not allowed to use in it. את הסוכה, וכל דבר שאינו מקבל טומאה וגידולו מן הארץ, and anything that doesn't receive טומאה and grows from the ground, שמתגיימים בשני התנאים הללו כאחד, משחכים בו. So anything that comes, that doesn't receive טומאה, in other words, anything you cut off the tree, or raw material that comes from a tree, go ahead, use it. בגמרא דורשים כלל זה ממה שנאמר. Where do we learn this? There's a verse that says, חג הסוכות תעשה לך, it says the holiday of Sukkot you should do to you, באספך מגורנך ומיוקבך. When are you going to do it? When you gather from your granaries and from your wine places. In other words, בפסולת גורן ויקב הכתוב מדבר. In whatever remains from your granaries and whatever remains from your vineyards. כלומר, ממה שנשאר לאחר שאספת גורנך ויקבך. You can use whatever is left over after you use your grain and your vineyard. כגון קשים, for example, straw וזמורות and branches, מהם תעשה סוכה. From them you can make a sukkah. So let's look at זה הכלל. This is the ruling. שבמשנתנו שונה מזה הכלל של מקומות אחרים. That usually when we say this is the ruling, it has a different meaning that it has in this Mishnah. שכן במקומות אחרים הכלל הוא מעין הפרט שקדם לו. Because every time it says this is the ruling, it means this is the ruling like the information we just gave you, like the individual information we gave you before. ואילו כאן אין הכלל מעין הפרט שנשנה לפני כן. And over here it's not the same. It is not the same. במשנתנו בעניין מחובר לקרקע שהוא פסול. Because the כלל should be what פסול. And over here the כלל is what is kosher. אלא אילו משנתנו עוסקת בסכך, but since our Mishnah is dealing with סכך, פסול, with סכך which is not kosher, נקטה זה הכלל. It told us this is the ruling, להשמיענו, to teach us. שנוסף על מה ששנינו לעיל, that besides what we said before, שאין משחכים מדבר מחובר לקרקע, that you don't cover in something that is connected to the ground, יש עוד שני תאים בהכשר הסכך. There's two more conditions. It cannot be connected. What's the two? שיהיה דבר שאינו מקבל טומאה. Another thing, it cannot receive impurity, it cannot be a vessel, and it has to be גידולו מן הארץ. It has to come from the ground. ואם היה חסר בו אחד מהתנאים הללו, and if it doesn't have one of those rules, הסוכה פסולה. The sukkah is not kosher.